Hi, I'm Courtney Harvey. I'm the founder and still work at the Pump Station and Nursery, which is a breastfeeding and new parent center in Santa Monica, California. We also have one in Hollywood. And today I'm at the Honest Company with 4 incredible working moms, and we're celebrating National Breastfeeding Awareness Month. And so we're going to have a great conversation today about breastfeeding. Nothing off the table, and you can be part of the conversation. You can just comment below, and we'll try to answer your questions as well as we go forward here. So I'd like to begin by having each person on the panel introduce themselves and tell us who you are and how many kids you have and how old they are. If you want to include their names, that'd be cool too. So we start with you?
Yeah, sure. My name is Caitlin. I have a daughter, Alice, who is 2.5, and I'm expecting a little girl in December.
Another girl.
Another girl.
Hi, I'm Teresa. I have a daughter, Ida, and she is 8 months.
I'm Nikki. I have 2 girls. Naomi is 17, and Isla will be 4 in September.
I am Laurel. I have a daughter, Evelyn, who is 20 months, and I am expecting a boy in January.
So that's the only boy on the whole
think
panel. Well, cool. So this is a great group, and I think we're going to have a good time today. There's no judgment here at all. Everything is on the table. Honest Company supports whatever for healthy, happy families and babies. And so I just want you guys to flow out with just honest comments about this, because as I teach breastfeeding, I really try to share with people that it isn't always easy, and it's a path, and everybody's path's a little bit different, right? So I want you to tell me, first of all, how it started. How was that latch situation? When people were worried about that. They're worried that they can't do it, and they're worried that the latch will be tough. And so anybody want to start? What was latch like for you, getting that baby breast?
Latching was actually the easiest part of my breastfeeding journey. She latched right away, and her part was easy. How I felt and how it went for me was very different, with the pain and whatnot. But we were lucky that she latched.
So you had a lot of pain with the latch. Okay. So does anybody know, is that normal or not normal? Have lots of pain?
Not normal.
Yeah, it is not. And I mean, I just was with a mother who had incredibly sore nipples with damage, etc. I mean, you see it all the time. So to say it's not normal, it sure happens a lot, but it usually is fixable. So how did that go for you?
Yeah. So when I was in the hospital, all seemed good, and I think it all went downhill as soon as I immediately went home. And I didn't realize, but in the hospital they were like helping her latch appropriately, and when I got home, I didn't know how to get her like in the right place to latch appropriately. So I ended up with very, very sore nipples immediately. And so I went and saw a lactation specialist right away. From one of my friends, was like, you gotta go immediately. So I was lucky in that I was able to resolve it quickly and get her to latch appropriately. Great.
So, another thing that kind of happens when moms go home is the milk hasn't come in, and then it comes in after you get home, and there's a smell and now the latch is more difficult.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I don't think they have a lot of time in the hospitals to sort of do preemptive planning on that.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that may have been it too.
Yeah, could have been. Nikki, how about you?
It was off and on, and I think that we don't consider anatomically or just people's physical differences. When you have more up top, it's a different experience, and so we struggled with latching. Sometimes it was good, sometimes it was bad, and then ultimately I wasn't sure if she was getting enough milk, so we struggled, we just always struggled.
Both kids?
Well, actually, Naomi, who's 17, she's my adopted child.
Oh.
So I never had gone through any of this before, and didn't necessarily have resources or, a large community of women to talk with.
Yeah. It's been the way it is for so many. Laurel, how about you?
It's funny, for me, latching was not a challenge at all. I mean, she latched immediately in the hospital. I had other challenges in the hospital that were really frustrating, in that, they tell you, here are the hunger cues, if your baby, and I can't remember them, which is sad. But I remember there was a sign that was like, your baby's doing these things. And I had one lactation consultant say, as long as she's doing that, keep her on the breast. Well, she was on my breast for an hour and a half.
Right.
And it caused extraordinary chapping and pain. And I remember talking to a girlfriend of mine who had a son 4 months older, and both she and my pediatrician gave me the same advice, which said, you know, if you don't protect your nipples, your baby's not going to get any milk down the road, right? And so it's like, it's a balance of, yes, you know, they have to get enough, but also an hour and a half of suction on one breast is
so this baby
doing
is really
no one any good.
To bring this milk in.
Yeah, and so I think, you know, figuring that out over the first couple days was really confusing and overwhelming and challenging, understanding my child, but then also the physical implications of what that meant for the next 2 weeks as my nipples
Well, once your
recovered.
milk came in, did the baby nurse a little bit less?
Oh yeah, it was really just those first, I would say, like those first 2 days in the hospital, as before the milk came in, that she had constant cues, and I just didn't know how to respond to that. And I kind of got into a poor cycle, but I'm grateful that I was able to catch it before it became.
So what did you do different?
I hate to say like used a schedule, but you know, I knew if I fed her for 40 minutes, like she could handle 2 hours. You know, she was going to be okay.
So we still teach as lactation people that it is okay to let your baby be on the breast long periods of time as long as they're latched deeply and correctly. But that could have been an issue too.
Totally.
Yeah, so.
But you know, it solved itself and it got there. And we didn't have. Once I got through that, that was fine. But those first 2 days, it's just very confusing and overwhelming, and it's just hard to know.
Yeah,
Plus, I was off for 2 days of sleep deprivation. You know,
it's really hard.
just come through
You don't even know
labor.
what's
All the
happening.
things, everything combined, the totality of the circumstances.
Exactly.
Oh, and this too.
Exactly.
Yeah. So did you use any specific technique on latching? Was that something that you heard about, or we chatted a little bit before you mentioned something that you heard?
I remember like the closet of the hamburger, but I go like this because I remember having the gesture that goes with the word. I don't know what it means and who's supposed to do this.
So what it means, if you don't, I can touch myself here. It's to the side, away from the nipple, creating a little bit of a sandwich. So if you're eating so for those of you who don't live in California, we have to use the right phrase here. It's the In-N-Out burger. It's a double.
Okay.
And how do you get that in your mouth? You have to press it out. You have to shape it. So that's what it's about.
Okay.
But you can't get your hands in the middle, or the
No.
baby can't latch correctly. So you're to the side. So you're
Okay.
creating the sandwich.
Yeah.
And then the other part of it is that the baby needs to start back on the sandwich as you would on a burger. You don't go like this, because you'll only get sesame seeds on the top of the bun. You've got to go for the underside, and I hate to use the word bite because that sounds painful, but you do have to go way back here to get that bite, so that you're coming around with that deep latch, and then the baby's landing that nipple deeply on the tongue instead of here in the front of the palate. So now you've got that in. Ready to go.
Ready to go for number 2.
Yeah. So anybody else, anything different from that on latch technique?
Yeah,
So,
that's what I do.
you know, there's
too,
something
right?
that's coming into the media a lot now, and into the, so talking about self-latch and letting a baby just crawl up and latch on, and sometimes that works really well, but sometimes you need a little bit more deliberate approach, as in the sandwich technique that you just mentioned, the hamburger.
I found the nurses really helpful with that, because I feel like they were pretty hands-on with
Very hands-on.
Yes.
helping you navigate that space, and I'm very grateful.
Thankful, and that's a great thing to say, that more and more hospitals are bringing on lactation help and having the nursing staff and trained in better techniques for breastfeeding. So that's really good, helpful. Laurel, the next question I think might start with you, because you mentioned how do you know your baby's hungry or full? How did that come to you later on?
It's a good question. I mean, I took a very scheduled approach with her feeding, because I felt like it was going to be more successful for me as a parent, and it just felt right for our family system. And I know everybody has a different way of doing it, but for us it actually worked really, really well, and she responded super well to it. So I would say, you know, within probably 2 weeks, I had her on an every, 2.5 to 3 hour schedule during the day, and then at night let her go, as long as she could, and slowly those stretches became longer and longer. And there was I remember maybe she was 8 weeks old and there was some cluster feeding that happened, you know, in the afternoons.
It does for everybody.
Yeah, and so you sort of work around those things, but for me, I felt like the schedule was really helpful.
But I get from you that if she acted really, really hungry, you would have let her.
Absolutely. And it's like, okay, if she's giving me cues, you know, 30 minutes before the 3-hour mark, I'm not going to just, you know, wait for it. What I didn't want to happen was be, you know, every hour having to breastfeed. So for me, the scheduling worked really well, and she responded well to it.
And does anybody know how long it takes for a baby's stomach to empty?
Like at least 2 hours.
90 minutes.
90 minutes.
So it can be much quicker than that. And what's interesting is that for you that worked, and that's great, but for somebody, how much milk we have in our breasts, so that we now know that there's different storage capacities. And so some moms store smaller amounts and have to eat more often. Your schedule worked perfectly for your child. So but you tried and it worked out. Did anybody else, how did you know your baby was full? How did you know your baby was hungry? Did you wait for crying, or did you just wait for?
She was always hungry.
Always hungry.
And she was always hungry. And then, and I don't know if we're going to cover this later, but I found out later on that I didn't respond to a pump.
You just didn't release your milk to the pump. You didn't let it down.
And I had to work hard to pump. So I think a lot of that was also happening with breastfeeding as well. And so there was a period of time where I was like, is she getting enough? And then she lost a lot of weight in that first, few days before they go for their checkup. She lost weight. I was crying.
She was crying.
Yeah, we were all crying.
Did you find when you went to the doctor that she was getting enough?
No, I was still struggling through it, and I really struggled through breastfeeding the entire time until I went back to work and started pumping regularly, which I think helped a lot.
Well, you're amazing. I mean, now we know that what makes women the most successful is the intention to breastfeed, but that's certainly followed tightly by information and support. So I'm impressed. I'm impressed with your stick-to-itiveness.
I wanted to quit.
I
wanted to quit.
I understand that. I'm impressed daily. I get teary over some of the stories that moms tell me, and they're still hanging in and working hard because they feel it's important and they're trying. So, did anybody else have a different experience with fullness, or how you knew? Did your baby ever just drop off the breast satisfied?
Yeah, I think I kind of did latch a few times on each side in the beginning to make sure that she,
How many breasts do you have?
To make sure she was full, and she seemed to be good. And
so they gave some kids will be like your baby was as a newborn. Your baby was saying, I want milk now, and they're working hard to bring it in. But some babies just love to live in that spot, and this is sort of a baby's habitat in those first few, that what Harvey Cart calls the 4th trimester. They're really close like that. So, did you find breastfeeding to be a bonding experience for you?
Definitely.
And some, I know that somebody here might have struggled. You struggled a little bit. Anybody else struggle with breastfeeding?
I did.
So talk about that.
I got mastitis like 3 days after.
Which, by the way, is uncommon. Okay.
You're
special.
I'm really special. Like 3 days after having Alice, at like 104-degree fever, like crazy hallucinations, and a newborn. So that's fun. And a husband who's like, what the heck? What's happening here?
Yeah.
So
did they hospitalize you?
No, I didn't have. But they put me on antibiotics,
of course,
right away, and told me to take a break and switch to a pump. And I think I'm told that switching to a pump until things healed, like I was never going to ramp back up on my supply. That's what
it is true that mastitis does cause a lowering of milk supply, and you hadn't even gotten started really when that happened. That's really unusual to have that happen.
Yeah,
and gosh, you're going to try again with the next baby?
I would love to. I mean, I do feel like I missed out on. I know my daughter is very healthy and she is very happy and we're very close and everything, but I kind of missed out on what everybody talks about with like the bonding and the experience and everything.
So
like that.
You've proven though, beyond a shadow of doubt, you could be a great mother.
Oh yes,
breastfeed.
Yes, but, absolutely.
How was that emotionally for you during that really tough part of early parenthood?
It was, you're tired
but you
and
kept
emotional.
On nursing even through that. You kept on pumping and nursing.
I kept on pumping. I pumped. She never went back on the breast after 3 days. So I pumped as long as I could, and then just I wasn't making any milk, so I had to switch over to formula, so she could eat.
And we do want all the same thing. We want our babies to thrive.
Right.
So you gave it the all-fired incredible try.
I did, and it just was not meant to be, despite my best efforts with the various like supplements and the various foods, the list of foods that you read that are supposed to help with.
Do you remember any of those?
I think oatmeal, garlic. Is garlic? No. Maybe not. No, but I definitely remember. I remember oatmeal.
And people used
sure.
to say that, and you know what's interesting is there's no evidence-based information on any of it.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit on fenugreek now, and
fenugreek. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, that's
a little
so
bit. But some moms really feel it helps, and so it's worth a try.
Yeah.
You know, there's all kinds of things out there that we even have things like booty bars and more
the cookies
and the drinks, and a lot of moms do feel it makes a difference too.
Right.
So you gave every effort.
Yeah.
So you feel good about that.
I feel good about having put forth the effort. Yeah, I tried all the supplements, the teas. I tried everything, and it just wasn't improving. And she needed to eat, so she was gonna eat. But yeah, it was hard, and I hated with the formula. And I'll never forget this. All formulas say on the package, like we were reading the instructions for the amount of water to powder ratio, like it starts, this first sentence is, breastfeeding is best. It's like, I get it. I wouldn't be buying you if I didn't have to. So that it was like, and now it's fine, but at that moment, like you're so emotionally raw, having just had a baby, it's like insult to injury, pouring salt in my breast wounds. Like it's just.
You know, when I'm working with a mom that has to stop breastfeeding, I always try to help her find some comment, because some people will walk up to some moms in this day and age and say things that are hurtful. And so finding an answer that said, you know, something like, for us, breastfeeding is a medical possibility, which cuts it. I call it a stop falling answer. Sometimes women need a little help with that.
Yeah, that's
too. So Nikki, you said you struggled too with some of that. So how'd that work for you?
Well, so basically I supplemented until she was like a year old. Yeah,
but you kept that breastfeeding going even with supplementation?
We kept going all the way into toddlerhood. Yeah,
so you must feel really like you can support others because you went through sort of a tough situation. Yeah, well, good for you. That's great. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, we just supplemented. I pumped as much as I could. I gave her as much breast milk as I could. And she also had formula, and then...
So when you went back to work, your pumping got better for you?
I feel like it did, also because I had, like I said, I had to do a lot to pump. Like, you know, yes, I had to do a lot to pump. Yeah. So for some women, you know, they can just like put the pump on and like they're, you know, still typing. I could never do that. Like it was an event.
It makes me wonder, you don't have to answer this, but like what pump and what size flanges you were on. And
right, and so I was always like trying different ones. And the thing is that I think that conversation just really helps because I had my breakthrough in my aha moment just in having conversations with other women. And a woman said something about, you know, having larger breasts. And she was like, yeah, you know, because I have to massage all the way back to my armpits. And I was like, that's it. And once I started doing that, I was more successful. Yeah. So
because we do we have a little tail on our breast. It's called the tail of spins. How you can win Jeopardy.
That's a good trivia.
Underneath your arm, and some women they get engorged out.
Right.
So you do. That's our biggest milk producing section. Is out here on the sides.
Yeah, exactly.
So you got in there and worked it, and, and it helped.
It helped a lot. Yeah. And so after a year, when obviously she didn't need any milk anymore, we continued, and it was more of a bonding thing for her. It was more, it was something that.
Do you know what the average length of breastfeeding in the whole world is? Average, whole world, all put together. Want to guess? It's 2.5 years. Wow. So we're kind of under that mark, and the American Academy suggests 1 year, and then after that, as long as is agreeable. So you did fine, and World Health Organization says 2 years. Yeah, because it can be like threatening in some countries or some situations. So that was great. Anybody else want to add to that? About so what was it like when you went back to work? Well, let me back up here. And by the way, chime in if you have a question. Bring it to us. We'd love to have it. So the bonding, how was, you enjoyed that
Yes.
experience?
Yes, I did.
I did in the beginning. I think, so I breastfed my daughter for a year.
Right.
And right about 8 months when she started getting teeth, it changed the whole situation. And, you know, I'm going to go ahead and overshare here. But she was 8 months old and she was breastfeeding, and I was in the front seat of a car on my way to a barbecue, you know, as you're trying to do these things. And she sort of pulled back. She didn't intentionally bite me, but her lower tooth, which had just come in,
Which is like a serrated knife.
Which is like a serrated knife, just sliced my nipple. And the pain was horrific, but even worse, I was back at work and I had to pump, and pumps use suction. Cuts and suction don't really go well together, so I had to hand express 3 times a day for an entire week while that healed. And unfortunately, that was not the last time that happened. So for me, I had a goal. I really wanted to make it to 1 year of breastfeeding. And so those last, 4 months were pretty utilitarian. It was there for business. It wasn't really a time that felt bonding. I had a lot of fear actually putting her back on the breast. Sure. Is she gonna accidentally, latch down with teeth? What's gonna happen? And none of it, she wasn't a biter. It was, new teeth. Yeah. People move, it happens. And so I would say actually the latter part of breastfeeding was less emotionally gratifying, had some fears around it, and I was there to sort of get through to my goal and
you did.
move on. But in the earlier days when she was an infant and there wasn't that same type of fear, it was bonding and really positive. But it's interesting how my relationship with it definitely changed as she got older and changed over time.
I think you guys are sharing some really important stuff that people just don't talk about. I nursed 3 kids and I never had a wound like that.
Yeah.
But did
I'm so lucky you.
Did anybody bite me? Yeah. And then you can teach them not to. But yeah, I've seen when we sometimes put little pieces of Band-Aid or Telfa, vendors over that wound so that you can pump on top of it without it. Anyway, it's something we'll work on next time.
Totally. I hope it doesn't.
So maybe else will share about bonding and.
Yeah, I think my daughter's just now 8 months old, and it's getting. I think,
that scared you a little bit.
Yeah. She doesn't have teeth yet, so we're good. But I think it's definitely getting tougher. It is more utilitarian now. It's like, but I think the positive for me is it's instead of for me to get back home to see her before she goes to bed, so I don't have to pump one more time.
Right. I totally agree with that.
Yeah. So I'm like at home for her bedtime every night, no matter what, because I don't want to pump one more time. So
I think we see a sort of a universal thought here that breastfeeding can be great, can be troublesome, and sometimes you have to take a different route. But pumping is not fun.
No.
I would say it all depends. I have a love-hate relationship with pumping. Hated pumping once I went back to work and it became a mandatory part of my day. Yeah. But, early on, for me, I had a different struggle than a lot of people that was actually really hard to talk about because I felt guilty, which is that I had an oversupply of milk, which, I was in a mommy and me group and everybody's talking about, their challenges with supply and undersupply, and I felt like I couldn't really share the challenges that I was having, which were having real physical impacts on me.
And the baby too.
Yeah. And so, for me, I remember I didn't think I would have to start pumping until, a ways down the road as I was preparing to go back to work. And one weekend, I had to pump in order. I was so engorged and I had so much milk, and they were concerned I would get mastitis and a blockage if I didn't release it. And that pump was like a saving grace from God. I remember it was like 7 o'clock. I hooked up my strapless, hands-free pump, and I sat there and I thought, oh my goodness, the best that's ever happened to me. But it's funny because when pumping became then a necessity of the day-to-day, it was not something I liked. And my husband and I joke that, I wanted to throw my pump in the middle of the street and run over with my car when I was done breastfeeding.
Now you have to dig it out, dust it off, and get ready to go.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's interesting that you said that nobody in your group had that experience. When we see about 40% of women in that category of a lot of milk. We call them dairy queens.
Yeah. I joked that we needed a refrigerator or a freezer for our garage because I didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah. And
I feel bad saying that, but
because you feel sorry for moms who
I
are on the
do.
other side of it. Yeah, but we do see about 40% of women that can only nurse on one breast for feeding because they have so
Yeah.
much milk.
I had to pump
So, yeah.
every single feeding the other
Yeah.
side.
And I think the overall perception in our country is that people don't generally have enough milk, but in most cases they really can make enough milk. It's just different woman to woman. So when you came back to work, you just mentioned that. I'd love to hear from all of you. And you weren't pumping when you came back to work yet, but you were seeing other mothers pumping, so that affected you too a bit. You know, just saying, oh. Yeah. So how did the rest of you integrate that into your life, into your working? When did you pump? I mean, you pumped at work. How many times? Do they have a place here? I'm sure they do.
We do.
Yeah.
This company has a place for women to go pump.
Yeah.
I've seen the pumping room here.
Yeah. I would say, I have the best situation here coming back to work, and I probably need it longer. My goal was 6 months, and I'm still going 8 months. And I think it's really due to the fact that we have an amazing room here. It's so accepted. There's a lot of other women who are pumping too, and we often get in the room
This is
together.
a very woman-friendly company, a very mother-friendly company.
Yeah, and we have these amazing pumps here. We have like the nice $2,000 Medela, the Symphony, yeah. So I think the experience and what we provide to the employees here has really given me an opportunity to go longer than I anticipated, and also the community that we have of pumping women. So.
Do you ever look at somebody else's milk and go, how come hers is that color?
Yeah. And I'm like, how does she get so much?
Yeah.
It's funny. I have to say, while I didn't enjoy the act of pumping, I had myself on a schedule 3 times a day.
Yeah,
and
3 times
I
a
was
day.
in that room at whatever time it was. And there was 2 other women who came back within 3 weeks of me, and we were all on the same schedule. And we were doing this for about 6 months, and I have to say it was one of the most wonderful experiences because the 3 of us became so close.
And we still are again.
Yeah, and we had so much conversation during those, those 30-minute sessions where it feels really intimate and really private, and those are relationships I don't think I ever would have formed had I not been doing that. And so while none of us enjoyed the logistics of what we were having to do, there was a whole different component around community and support that is I'm so grateful for, and I'm really glad that I had that experience.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have that still? You have supportive people?
Yep, I pump often with lots of other people. We just happen to go in there at the same time, so some of the other ladies were definitely have some nice sessions together pumping.
And maybe that makes women make more milk, just all the encouragement. So did you pump at home? Did you have to pump in the night or at home to keep up? Because we do know that babies on bottles will actually take a little more food than babies will at the breast. So moms sometimes, they're making enough, but they don't think they are because the caregivers are giving a bit more.
Right.
So do you have to do extra?
So the first 6 months I did an extra pump. I started pumping. I had a little bit of issues with my milk coming in at first. So I did pump immediately. And I pumped every day up until I came back to work, an extra pump. So 1 extra session. So I had a nice big supply when I came back to work. And I continued that extra pump on the weekends until she was about 6 months old. And then I stopped. So now I'm not quite, like you said, making enough. I'm like an ounce or 2 short every day, depending. And I have enough freezer
and then
stock.
You make that up on the weekend?
Yeah, no, I don't anymore. I don't pump on the weekends anymore. I gave that up when I hit my 6-month mark.
Do you guys that pumped at work have some strategies? I mean, we have a few. We have a class called Working Without Weaning and that kind of to try to help. Do you have a strategy? Any strategy? Like, for instance, one of the things we suggest is that you buy extra parts. So that you have a clean bag and that goes in, and you have a dirty bag, and so you
I'm going to say something that's probably going to horrify you right now. So I remember coming back to work my first day, and I had pre-bought enough fresh parts so that I could have a fresh bottle and flange and all the pieces for every single pump, both sides. My bag was humongous and overflowing. I was like, this is such a pain in the butt. And then I was like, oh, well, someone mentioned to me that you can, and this is the part you're going to be mad at me for, just put them in the refrigerator and reuse those parts. And while that might not be recommended, for me it made things so much
the baby
easier.
never got sick.
No,
Yeah,
but she was also older. Like, I wasn't doing this when she was a newborn. You know,
Right.
she was 6 months old at this point.
So did you pump right into the cold milk then, or did you get new bottles?
I used new bottles.
Yeah.
I reused the flanges.
The flanges,
Yeah.
I do the
We
same
hear
thing.
that. I mean, it isn't highly recommended, but it is being done.
Which I know. I'm sorry.
When you think about it, I saw a lady, where was I, and her baby, on an airplane, flying home from Germany this weekend, and her little toddler was walking around with a pacifier fell on the floor, and she picked up, put it right back in her baby's mouth. So it's like, well, do we have to be so zealous?
Right.
Yeah. So, anybody else have some strategies that you used at work?
I do the same thing. I think we all do actually in the office, because nobody wants to wash 3 sets of parts every day.
So much.
It's so much. So we all have our Tupperware, and we all put it in, and it goes in the fridge in the pump room. So.
Well, it works for you guys.
It works out. Never had a problem.
Is anybody sending us? Are you sending us some questions and messages? These women are giving you a lot of.
I do have one question
Okay.
from Erika Barron Jordan, who says, "How long does it take to get rid of sore nipples?" Exclamation point.
Okay. Well, I wish I knew how old her baby was, but so I worked with a 3-day-old this morning whose mother's nipples were absolutely scabbed, and taught her how to put the baby on correctly. And she said, "Oh my God, I can still feel that I have a wound, but it's not hurting nearly as much."
Totally.
And so we call that old shoes. Old shoes. If you put on your new shoes and you go to work, you think you look pretty spiffy in your new shoes. You got blisters on both heels by noon. You go home, you put on your old shoes, and now can you still feel the blister, but it's not grinding a new wound. And so that's how we sort of say. So if she's still sore, Erika, wherever you are, get help. Maybe take a look. If you went to YouTube and typed in the word deep latch technique, my picture comes up, and there I showed you how to latch deeply. That sandwich technique that we talked about, tip that head back deeper on, and maybe something else is going on. It'd be nice if a lactation consultant could just check and see if there's anything going on in that baby's mouth, like tongue tie or high palate, and take a look at your latch and get you help, because really you shouldn't be that sore after the first few days, and even then, not so sore. So I hope that helps, Erika, and you can get some help. So anybody else on there?
Amy says she loves you.
Well, Amy, I love you back. So how about breastfeeding in public? How many do you accomplish that?
Oh yeah. Many
Oh
times.
yeah, all the time. Were you nervous about it? Did you think you would be able to do that before you had the baby? Did you think about that?
No. I never thought I would do it ever.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty private person, so never thought I would do it. But you know, if you want to like leave the house, it's like, well, sorry guys, you know, like.
But you know what you're doing? You guys are paying it forward. You're teaching other mothers, and so when they see somebody nursing in public, or somebody here having a baby goes, look at all those women pumping, they're going to give it a shot too. When I did it, my oldest son is 44, and nobody was breastfeeding, and I never thought I would, and I was doing it in 2 weeks. But there is a little piece to it. I think you could probably speak to it. I'm not huge-breasted. I'm a BC kind of girl, and that's easier than the larger breasts in public nursing. It takes a little longer to learn how to do it in public. So did you wear the Hooter hider thing?
No, nothing. I was like,
you know, me either. I didn't. I just kind of. But now in my day we didn't have, the only nursing bra I could find looked like geriatric shoes. But now they have pretty
beautiful ones.
They're really nice. Yeah.
My daughter nursed her kids each 2+ years, and she wore tank tops every day. Under everything, and it was so easy because you're covered instead of your whole back.
You just.
So did you use layers?
Yeah, wardrobing is very important. So and I didn't realize until after I had my daughter all of the dresses that I had that had like a
but down the back.
So I had to like get rid of all of my dresses or make sure that I wore a lot of 2 pieces.
But 2 pieces.
I thought buttoning down the front would be good, and it isn't because it bears you. So I found the 2 pieces a lot better too. Did you have a special wardrobe that yours?
No, I mean I remember in the like early days, you know, using like the muslin blanket, but then I can't see anything, and she's hot and sweaty, and I was like,
Yeah.
I'm going to censor myself. No more.
Did you ever have somebody say anything negative to you?
I did not. You know,
No?
Never.
No.
I was
also-
shy. I kind of told everyone, I was like, if you want to hang out with me right now, you're going to see my boobs.
Don't even say sorry next time.
Yeah,
Just say,
that's
"Let's
true.
just
Yeah.
enjoy
I
yourself."
caring, to be
Yeah.
honest. And even if somebody had made a comment,
Didn't care.
I don't think I would have cared. I wouldn't have
Yeah.
taken it personally because clearly they have problems, not
Right.
me.
Yeah,
Right.
and
So-
Mom would talk about that in our breastfeeding support groups, and the other mothers really helped them a lot. I one time had a mom that came in and said her family was critical and she couldn't breastfeed in front of them, etc. And the moms, she was a darling gal. These moms all fell in love with her. And then they called her up that week and said, "Can you meet us at 16th Street Cafe in Santa Monica? We're going to have lunch." And she said, "Sure." So they all got into it. They said to her, "We're going to teach you how to nurse in public."
Oh, that's so nice.
And so she learned, she came back to group the next week saying that she started nursing in front of her father and her, at home, and it was just too bad.
Yeah,
Yeah,
It's
too
all
bad.
good. So anybody else, any short, funny stories to share about anything people said to you or just something really funny?
I remember ordering dinner for delivery and opening the door to pick up the delivery food, and I definitely had a boob out. That definitely happened.
Sign off to the UPS guy. What my niece
Yeah.
did that.
And they gave me a funny look. I'm like, what are you looking at? I'm so confused. And I was like, oh my god. It's so embarrassing.
That's your tip.
Exactly.
Be careful when the UPS guy rings the doorbell.
Just do a check.
It's just so
Body
easy.
parts check.
Your brain is in a fog.
Oh, yeah.
It's just so easy to forget. I think that type of stuff happened
Yeah.
more than I would have
Well,
thought.
the truth, people do see a lot of breasts on magazine covers and everywhere. They're just so odd. So, I mean, once in a while,
Yeah.
it's all okay. So, one other question that we have here is did you leak a lot? Is that a problem for you?
Yes.
Yeah, you're a big producer. So.
I remember, so here's a funny story about leaking. This was, gosh, it probably was about 6 weeks after I had her because I had just gotten the green light to exercise again. And none of my sports bras fit, which, yeah, I've been a small-chested person my whole life. And
So
I was
this
like,
was a
I
whole
have no idea how to manage boobs. I don't I don't know.
You take lessons.
And so I called some of my girlfriends, that have breasts, and I was like, "What do you do for sports bras? What do you do?" Because this Nike stuff is not cutting it. And so I got some recommendations on some good ones, and I didn't know what size it would be, so I ordered a couple in the mail, and I, was trying them on in my bedroom, and I started to jog in place to see how it felt. The friction or the jogging, or I don't know what it was.
Yep.
It was like milk explosion. Everywhere, all over the floor.
So you bought that bra?
I kept that bra. And then I couldn't make it stop. And I was like, what's going on? It was my husband walked in. He was like, what's happening in here? I don't know how to explain this.
So did you ultimately, were you able to exercise?
Yeah, but I put in the pads.
Pads.
Because
Some double bras.
Every time I exercised, I found the right bra that fit for me. And if anyone is looking for that, I can give you a recommendation. It was adjustable, which was really nice because your boobs grow and they shrink.
Yeah.
All that stuff. But I ended up having to wear almost all the time the
Pads.
nursing pads to keep myself from springing a leak publicly.
Yeah, even all the way almost till you weaned.
I would say probably about 6-7 months.
Yeah.
It definitely, as things progressed later,
Got less.
calmed down and got less. But in those first few months,
It was
things were bananas.
just touch you and it would.
It's crazy.
Anybody not leak?
I didn't leak much.
Yeah.
No.
I never did.
Only in the first few weeks, I think, when you're like still regulating,
Yeah.
I had some leaks, but
And even now, like most of us let down on both sides simultaneously, so when the baby's nursing here, this one will leak.
oh yeah, that's
Oh,
true.
yeah.
It does happen in the morning. I do leak in the morning on
There's
one
a couple
side.
products where moms
Yeah.
can put it in their bra and capture that leak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that
seen
gets,
that.
I've seen moms leak out 4 or 5
I don't
ounces
think
of
it's
blood.
enough.
No.
Oh yeah, by
Wow,
wearing
that's
the
a
thing.
lot.
Wow.
No, and that helps. And lessens the leak.
I just have
Somehow, right?
Just a turtle.
Any other stories about that?
I just remember leaking and feeling like panic, like you gotta get this, because my supply was running
Yes.
out. Like,
Every
no,
drop.
what a waste!
It's
Like
like
just frantic. Yeah, exactly. The liquid gold.
Every drop.
I understood the saying, crying over spilt milk.
Yeah.
This was, I was
Yes.
putting them into the freezer bags, and I stood the freezer bag up on my kitchen counter. It was like 4 ounces of milk, and that was a lot of milk, and I was really excited about that, and it just tipped over.
That's so
all
sad.
over the kitchen counter.
If your husband does it, he is
Very in trouble. Very in
We
trouble.
had a bottle that you had to put a plug in the bottom that was like where the air filter comes in. And I cannot tell you how many times he took the bottle, poured the milk in, didn't have to stop on the bottom, milk went straight down the drain.
You don't buy that bottle again.
No, but it was the only one that she would take. We had like a bottle drama.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
exhausting.
Different
But
panel.
Do we have any more questions? Any more questions? In that
Let me,
one?
hold on, let me pull it up. No, just some really nice feedback. Mom's saying this is helpful.
All right.
Oh, that's great. So I think we're winding up here a little bit. Does anybody have anything else they really have a bent to share? I mean, I look at you and say, you had a really tough, painful, sick experience.
I'm optimistic for round 2.
Good.
So this was some good advice.
And for you, get help right away. I mean, you that 3-day, honest to God, that is really unusual.
Yeah.
What usually causes mastitis is wounded nipples. So,
Yes.
and certainly plugged ducts can lead that direction too. When something gets just plugged or thickened, which is caused by not draining breast well, but you haven't gotten there yet.
No.
So that was really sad.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. And go do everything you can to help you next time.
Yes.
I'll be your girl.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Corky.
So thanks so much to all of you for sharing these stories. I think, can we do this again? Because I think this is really helpful.
Yes.
Because I think sometimes we stand like some shining head teaching people how to breastfeed, and it's all just open up your bra and scram it.
If only it were that easy.
Right, and I think I try to be so honest with my breastfeeding classes, but you've only got so much time to teach that, and I think, but if you stood and said this is going to be the worst experience, I mean, you just can't. You have to paint a positive picture because it does usually become positive.
Oh, yeah.
And yes, the bumpy little road at first. So my advice is to get as much help as you can prior.
Yeah.
Learn as much as you can. Find a friend group. Look at what this meant to these moms pumping in this workplace. And find the lactation people in your community. Find who they are, where they are. Ask everybody, who did you use? And so that you can get the help you need. For anybody here that's expecting a baby, or even any of you longtime mothers, this company, Honest Company, always wants to help you to have healthy, happy babies. You guys can speak for your company even better than I can, but we were kind of with this company from the start and have been a partner kind of in a loose way to be with this fantastic company. So they're here to help you meet your needs, even feeding needs. And if you need more information, honest.com and pumpstation.com. You can find us, you can phone us, we take calls all day long, and this company would really be glad to help you. I think you work in client services, so there's a whole raft of people out there ready to help and answer questions any time. Is there anything I forgot to say?
Thank you.
I think you're
That's
right.
right.
Oh, thank you. That was a blast for me. And we can't wait to see these new babies. Finally, out of 40, one little boy.
Yeah.
One more.
Although, who cares? The girls are great. Everybody's great. So congratulations to you too. And come on, Nikki.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Thanks so much. All right. Thank you so much for joining us today.